back to HGC North America, where we just saw Heroes Hearth and Simplicity be able to duke it out, but we are not done yet. We have No Tomorrow and Team Freedom up for you guys. I'm Dreadnought, with me is Jay Howe, and when you hear those names, what comes to mind?
Macro, team fighting. Guess which one you get from No Tomorrow and Equinox?
Probably the team fighting. Which one do we get in this meta? Also the team fighting, something that maybe Team Freedom, might have to second guess themselves, which, I'll bring it up in a little bit, but there is a lot to say about what has happened with the dominance of Team Freedom, with the not so dominance of Team Freedom when you look at them internationally. But first, after that last series, we got to look at our standings, see what, kind of mix in all the standings have happened. And the answer is, with that victory for Heroes Hearth Esports, not too much, just furthering that kind of gap between them and Gale Force Esports.
Yeah, they're still chilling there at the 4th spot, but obviously a step in the right direction. And of course, No Tomorrow and Team Freedom. Freedom obviously moving to that 3rd spot by way of their map win-loss in terms of their positive wins over losses there. Ended up falling to the number 3 seed after being near the top at the early part, and then dropping, of course, coincidentally, to No Tomorrow was their first series loss. Who they'll be playing next.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see whether or not they're able to kind of make that happen here. And that was a little bit of what I was talking about with Team Freedom, the kind of dominance they had within the region. Then week 4 happened, one of those kind of weeks you wish you could kind of remove from your brain. Had a doubleheader that weekend, struggled in both of those series. Then, when we see them qualify, go perform at the Western Clash. When we look at Western Clash last year, Team Freedom showing up versus kind of this one, yes, a slightly different roster, but they outperformed themselves. Everyone was just, not only were the most successful North American team at that event, but they were straight up just like, everybody was like, where did this come from? Out of nowhere. Then we look at this Western Clash. They go boot camp in Europe, come out, and then I would argue maybe the weakest performing North American team at that event.
0-4. They lost both their series, didn't win a game, and don't mean to be too harsh, but it wasn't exactly the most competitive. And I think that that's a big learning point for them, because obviously they brought in 2 new members, Lutano being one of them. And going into the Clash, into that last week, Dreadnought had one of the smallest hero pools, actually had the smallest hero pool in North America. However, we look over at the Eastern Clash and we look at somebody like SC, world-renowned, one of the best players that we've had in the scene for many years. His equally as small. It's just a matter of how you work around that and where you kind of feel the meta is and when you need to prioritize those heroes. So I think that Freedom, maybe during their time, obviously the boot camp was there. They probably learned a few things, but sometimes you can learn more in defeat than you can in victory. I expect them to come back strong.
Yeah, Team Freedom, has a lot to maybe think about or has spent time thinking about, but so is No Tomorrow. Either way, we're going to throw it over to our players really quick and see what their thoughts were about this matchup.
Since we got back from the Clash, obviously the Clash wasn't the result we were looking for. We're super disappointed in ourselves, so we put some hard work since we're back and trying to get back on our feet. So No Tomorrow is always an interesting team. Sometimes they show up like as a whole, as a 5, and they look really scary. Equinox is the kind of guy that can literally 1v9 if needed. So we need to approach this match super seriously and make sure that everyone's on point, because if we don't, it's gonna just backfire as it happened in week 4. So we're heading into this match, taking the match super seriously, and hopefully we can pull it off.
We were able to upset Freedom last time, and I feel confident that we could do it again. However, I would still consider it an upset if we were able to beat Freedom again this part. I do feel that Freedom had a really hot start to this season in part 1, and they started to fall off a little bit towards the end. However, I'm really excited to see what they bring coming back in at the start of part 2. I'm always impressed with KZN's play. I think he's definitely near the top of supports in North America, but I'm most excited to keep seeing the progression of Lutano in the HGC. I feel like he's a very strong ranged player that came from even in depth last year and came in and really has been showing some excellent work with Team Freedom.
Casanova talking about Lutano and the impact that he has had coming over from Even to Death, being a part of the roster shuffles that we saw at the end of North America and finding himself on Team Freedom. And we talked about maybe some of the underperformance or maybe the weaker performance of Team Freedom at the Western Clash. And I don't want to put it on him, but there is a lot of things that you have to talk about when looking at that. Mainly the hero pool that existed before, mixed with we saw some new heroes coming out from him at the Western Clash, not as successful. One of that being Tracer, which again is not on this kind of, nerf, at least not yet for this patch. So it's like, is that what we still see them stick to? Is it the Team Freedom of old and what kind of worked at the beginning of Phase 1, Part 1? What do you think?
I feel like it's got to go back to a little bit of the old school. We're going to see the future nerf to Tracer soon. The Hanzo, we saw the fall off after the nerfs towards the later part of the early phase of the season. And then it kind of sprung up a little bit. SC was like, look, I know there's a lot of other heroes out there, but let's still make Hanzo work. And we saw that in the Eastern Clash. We saw a little bit of a return for that. But also, I want to see, can they work in the Junkrat, maybe in Yoda's position? But specifically with Lutano, I think you have to get back to the Greymane, the Genji, and the Hanzo and be comfortable with it and realize that they're still strong heroes. They just weren't that OP dominant hero that we saw in the earlier part of the year.
Well, Team Freedom and No Tomorrow, they're both going to be looking to set things apart from their opponent, and it's first going to start with the Battleground. For game number 1 here, we find ourselves going to Infernal Shrines, as we see the map bans No Tomorrow taking away Volskaya Foundry. Team Freedom banning out that Cursed Hollow. Not too surprising of a selection. Infernal Shrines, I'm torn on when I see it picked up nowadays, right? I'm like, it used to be the standard, so every time we see it pop up, I'm kind of like, oh, I'm cool that we're going back to what is every strat matters, every strat's viable type map, no team really getting that kind of snowball to the end. But the map is definitely more snowbally than it used to be, and also it doesn't seem to cater to that every playstyle matters. It is very much kind of Volskaya-esque, I would argue, right? It is very much around that map objective and how much past that you get. It's just maybe Punishers and Protectors, they aren't necessarily equal in strength level.
Freedom picked a lot up from what we saw Dignitas do, and what Dignitas has been doing for a very long time is that they'll use their solo to split off. If they win the first Punisher, look for them to 4-man push, split 1 off. We even saw Dig split 2 off and 3-man push. You choose a lane, whichever one that solo goes to, or if you split off 2, you can go there. We saw Team Freedom in the later part of the early part of the Phase 1 where they used Ragnaros, they did a 5-man push, then busted out a lava wave to clear out that lane. So you split 1 off, prep that lane, rotate 4 up, and then dive under those minions, take that fort wall in another lane, and kind of start to snowball out of control. But the gameplay changes. Those forts are worth a lot more than they used to be, plus it sets up future pushes as well. So look for them, if they get the first Punisher, to make that play.
And looking for drafts, kind of tools to make sure they can capitalize on that Punisher when it leads over the wall. One of the heroes that's great at that is Medivh, which, sadly, after we kind of have a setback here with our draft, the answer is he's not even going to be an option because he was already banned out.
Redo! No, obviously, Onsets
take away all the fun heroes.
Well, it's where does Maiev kind of fall in here? And what type of priority do we see? I think the Junkrat, in particular, for this Battleground, will have a high priority, but I don't know if it'll be before second ban or not. And then we look at the potential Alex Strazo, Ragnaros strategies that we see on this to confirm the Punisher, try and get those skeletal defenders. I think that's something that, with the changes that we've seen in the meta just since the Clash, some of those strategies might not work the same way.
Yeah, I very much agree with you. And one thing, actually, I just realized that we kind of forgot to bring up for you guys at home is that No Tomorrow's sitting in a position where they aren't playing with much like Simplicity, but for different kind of circumstances, their entire normal roster here. We're going to actually have Jin coming in from the Open Division to play for Jason here today as we're looking back at this draft. And so that's going to maybe change some of the priority for No Tomorrow.
Ooh, that's actually a really good point, Dreadnought, because Jin from the Open Division has been a tank main for a very long time. He's also been at or near the top of the ladder in terms of Hero League, so he's a very prominently known player, but he's played a lot of tank role. Equinox didn't necessarily like playing the tank role, he just kind of filled that. That's why we saw the role swap for one weekend for Casanova and Equinox. I wonder if we might see him maybe move over towards more of a melee role, or maybe even this Maiev pick.
Diablo ban from Team Freedom. Not even going to let that as an option over to the other side of the table. Interesting choice. Infernal Shrines was the spawn of the Demon Lord himself, really, at the competitive meta way, way, way back at Spring Global Championship, but not necessarily the situation I expected to see that in this draft. We'll see if it kind of comes to light a little bit later. Tyrael and Blaze are the pickup now for Freedom. Bit of focus on towards that macro. I will say, for how little macro exists in Heroes of the Storm, Infernal Shrines does feel like it's one of the few you can still gain that upper hand through that if you have a big enough of a mismatch, a big enough of an advantage. So I'm not surprised to see him kind of rise in priority. Also double counter momentum to the Warden's Cage available.
Wow.
But that one, the Sonya, higher priority. Not surprised though, not only the rework, but the pressure she provides, the thrust she provides. And I want to say more importantly than anything that the new rework for Sonya kind of does compared to everything else is Malthael does not have a free winning lane consistently. He is now much, I don't want to say worse, but he definitely has to second guess himself. It used to be that if you picked Malthael, other than a few heroes, that you couldn't take that trade, but Sonya is going to really set that back a lot more and to make Malthael picks in more draft priority a lot harder.
You know, when we saw Space No Tomorrow derail the Freedom hype train,
Yeah.
it was a lot of aggression, and it mixed in a lot of Anubarak. We have Maev, we have Sonya. That's a lot of aggression already. But again, with Jhin being here, he might be moving over towards that tank role. That's something that we still need to find out. And that kind of changes the dynamic. It changes the way that No Tomorrow might approach this, which I think could be a very strong approach, a very aggressive approach. But with Tyrael and Blaze instantly on the other side, that is mega defense direct.
And we see a situation with the Garrosh now being removed to where Tyrael doesn't have as much, you know, kind of threat towards the front line, second guessing the opportunities to be able to get the sanctifications. It just really allows him to be a lot more problematic in this game. Stukov is a quick pickup here along with the Hanzo for Freedom. Feeling pretty comfortable after that secondary ban phase. Going again with the Stukov, I'm comfortable saying at this point, Uther is dead in North America. And the fact that we didn't see, it hasn't really seen any threat in any one of the drafts that we've gotten so far. Just normally, you know, again, compared to the Western versus Eastern meta, Stukov versus the Uther, you got a double invul. And yes, you have Blaze, beefy frontline, but it's like if Hanzo is the only way you can lose this game, is it worth taking the risk in the pick? We'll see if the Stukov provides that value here.
Hanzo for me is not enough. Statistically, this is his worst battleground, sitting at just below 40% globally on Infernal Shrines. Globally had near a 60% win rate before the Clash, which means that if you balance that out with a 37-ish% win rate on Infernal, that means he's dominating every other battleground because he's terrible on this one. I think they're going to need more. I think it's either going to be a Junkrat or the Tassadar. And Tassadar kind of fits in. It's a Yoda hero. Junkrat, of course, does well on this battleground to help you win. Both those heroes play well with what Freedom likes to do. There's the Anubarak, though.
And the Tracer as well to be paired with that Malfurion. A lot of offense here for No Tomorrow, something they've got to be very comfortable with here. But there's also a lot of counter momentum with the draft between that Tyrael and Blaze. Stukov as well, as long as he has his timing to get a proper positioning. I will say on that note, I want to see the TAS out of the two. When you look at No Tomorrow's, like, again, that kind of aggression, that all-in, and really, their fight is terrifying if it happens how they want it to. If you make more and more heroes very, very difficult to get that initiation. And right now, Stukov and Hanzo, those are the only two susceptible. You pick in the Tassadar, it makes it very easy to get that disengage. Nobody's going to be a prime target, and you should, in theory, win the fights over the long run. Not going that case, going to even pick up a different damage, not moving to the Junkrat, but instead, Greymane maybe a bit better with the 1v1 into Tracer. Could be some of the thought process there. Also, Lurking Arm mixed with Cursed Bullet is something we don't talk about too much, but essentially frontliners, whenever they eat Cursed Bullet, that oftentimes responds with a cooldown. And when you can't get the cooldowns because you're silenced, it hurts real, real good.
Feels bad, man.
Yeah.
Greymane, Tassadar, two most played heroes for Yoda, opting for the Greymane this go around. I think the Tychus ban was very telling in the sense that Tychus, because he has the Odin, gets that armor off that, also has Neo Steel coating at level 13, can deal with the Tracer a little bit easier. Plus, Tychus incredibly strong on Infernal Shrines. Freedom has to settle with kind of that secondary option, I think. Between the Greymane, between the Tassadar, I don't think they're bad, but with Greymane Hanzo, it doesn't necessarily have a ton of wave clear, especially early game.
Yeah.
And if you look on the other side, it's all-out team fight. If you get baited into those longer skirmish-oriented things, you better hope that you have enough sustain in there with the Stukov, else you might get run over, similarly to their previous series.
Yeah, and I think the only other major trade-off with the Greymane versus Tassadar and some of the other things we're poking around is kill potential on the Sonya over the first shrine drastically increases when you go with Greymane over the Hanzo. Hanzo, you're relying on the poke, whereas Tassadar, you know, and with Hanzo, you're waiting on the poke. Greymane, he might be able to get in, get a flash, go into great Worgen form, and really look to get that kill. We'll find out, you know, as we're ready here for game number 1 on Infernal Shrines between No Tomorrow and Team Freedom. But it is a tough question, one that I want to see, you know, is that double, you know, kind of vulnerable target, or excuse me, triple with that Stukov going to be too problematic here for Freedom?
Well, we do have Freedom here on the left, as it will be Lutano on Hanzo, Nasmus on Blaze, Zugrug on Tyrael, Yoda on Greymane, and Collusion rocking the big arm of Stukov.
And here for No Tomorrow, we're going to have Casanova playing the Maev. We have Tomster on that Malfurion. Equinox will be playing the Sonya. Jay Shrite going to be on that Tracer. And last is Jin, repping that front line as you projected on the Anubarak.
It's just a matter of synergy. Can they pull it off? It was the winning formula that they had in week 4. And we'll see if they can do it again here against Freedom. You know, the one thing that Greymane does bring up that the other heroes don't, when I talked about that 1-4 split that they get if they obtain the Punisher, Greymane does structure damage in Worgen form with that Inner Beast better than anybody in the game. So if you get that prep in that solo lane and then you can rotate over, Greymane capitalizes better than anybody.
Yeah, other than maybe Robo Goblin, that's about the only thing that competes with it. You know, if we're gonna say anything in absolutes here, I'm gonna think about the extreme cases. You know,
I'm absolutely in favor of Gazlo.
You know, since the rework though, I'm not even sure that's necessarily a true statement anymore. But back in the day, old school Gazlo.
He's strong, man. Post level 10.
Oh, man. Nice initiation here onto Yoda. The tether there coming out from Casanova, not even going to be necessary. First blood already here for No Tomorrow. Coming out swinging against Freedom. We talked about the aggression was the thing that seemed to break the camel's back for Team Freedom. Right now, it's at least enough to give them a quarter level advantage in what they can do with these time frames, these windows where members of Freedom are essentially just stuck in the Hall of Storm spawning.
I mean, that's super strong start right there. You know, Sonya obviously had the minor rework. She has the block charges this time. Block against a Greymane, a Stukov, a Hanzo. Their attack speed is not that fast. You're going to get mega value from Sonya. And speaking of mega value, this aggressive composition, they're walking right in. They're taking this.
Yeah, they're going to start it up. Casanova throws out the... Oh, well, look at that damage on Occlusion. Now, he can't move up for a lurking arm, at least not comfortably. He's going to get over the wall, but that might make him too susceptible. Tyrael and the full 5-man collapse is going to deter No Tomorrow from getting the invade here. Maybe poke and prod. Jay Shrite goes in. Jin hits the 2-man knockup. Tether back is going to get Zugrug in. He's going to be first to drop. The Tyrael passive will explode. Is Equinox going to survive? Yes, he will. But that Hanzo arrow snipes right down the line, and the members of Team Freedom finds himself a Tyrael 1-4-1.
That's only twice I've seen that now. The precision, though, speaking of precision, Nasmus being pulled back in, and No Tomorrow coming out hot right now, Dread.
That is such a great moment for them, keeping up this pressure with this offensive composition. And this is something where normally I think a lot of people at home, especially, you know, Dreadnought 2017 versus 2018 casting HGC North America, I'd be like, oh, this all-in composition is going to really struggle. I cannot say this more to anybody at home who has not been keeping track of some of the adjustments competitively. The macro game, I don't want to say she's dead because she's not, but she looks so different, so slow compared to what it was and the impact that it would have in the game, that if you draft this all-in kind of melee and you're doing anything as well as we see No Tomorrow right now, that is essentially going to force Freedom, where normally I'd say it's unrealistic, it is very much realistic under this meta.
It's the constant synergy, though, I think that's going to be required here, especially working in Jen, who's on that. The Pulse Bomb goes in onto Yoda. He's going to be just fine there on Greymane. But the Shrine in favor of Team Freedom thus far. Dread, if they pick this up, look for them to do a lot with it. Right now, Team Freedom definitely in charge as No Tomorrow moving forward, but I don't know if they're going to get the fight. Tracer on her way down. Here they go.
There they go. Casanova looked to join in, pulling in the tether, ends up finding himself a Nasmus, but not enough right now. Jin falling very, very low. Yoda goes in with that body block. Might cost him his life as Jay Shrite trying to go in, gets the recall, falls down to 1 HP. And Lutano, he's going to quick to use the passive hop over the wall, make sure that is not going to last too long. Lutano actually getting body blocked by his own allies there. Buys enough time for Stukov passive to come in, though, and this is Freedom finding that first puncher.
I want to see what they do with it. You know, Dreadnought, I was actually going back because I was looking at Lutano's hero pool. I was looking back in history. I casted him a lot in the open division before he made it in on Even in Death. And I'm like, where do his strengths lie? And it, you know, the Tracer play, the Vala play when she was meta, very skilled. I remember in open division calling his name a lot. And I think that if he gets the opportunity, the room to work, he can make plays like that. So we'll see if they can do more with it as we see 39 skeletal defenders waiting to get 40.
But
We're going to get an invade.
Blaze has shown himself bottom. This is a very good fight for No Tomorrow to take. This is one of those moments where I want to praise everything that Team Freedom is doing. They are not doing the predictable, like, oh, we're winning the game, keep taking the objective, let's go. They realize with the camp pressuring up on top that it's better to stop that. Look for the side soak, wait it out, cause resources to be committed here for No Tomorrow. But when you act that slowly and that confidently, and No Tomorrow doesn't give you essentially everything that you're asking for free, you end up losing about as much as you gained, and it's an even matchup. Great job from No Tomorrow to capitalize on that. I still appreciate the thought process there for Team Freedom, but it's something that, I mean, obviously has to be cleaned up as they just lost a Shaman Camp for nothing.
Well, that 4-1 split that I told you about, that Shaman Camp is denying the minions from moving up. Generally, you move those minions up. You can see they split Hanzo off early, but with Maev down here, they're not able to do that. They split off early, but Dread, this is much more difficult to do without minions. Instead of getting 2 towers, you get 1. Actually, they split off a little bit early, they get none. So this is what they do. But because of that invade, kind of derailed a lot of what Freedom wanted to accomplish.
That's not the first time that strategy has actually been implemented. It originally started with Dragonshire. If you took an invade of your opponent's Giants, you would sacrifice when there was the third, you know, turret rip in pieces turret. When it sat there and the Giants would shoot at it, right? It would eventually draw enough aggro where it would get minions and it would kind of stall out the wave. And it would actually be at least levels 1 through 3, essentially a setback if you got the invade on your camp and you didn't get a kill, because if your opponents didn't kill it, you lost more in minion
ammo,
XP than you lost on anything else at that point in time. So cleverly done here with kind of the invade attempts and things of the like, but knowing that that Punisher, you know, was started and picked up for Team Freedom, and No Tomorrow was the one with the kind of cheeky rotations. Freedom very much is the one gaining so much on this point in time. Nice body block attempt there from Equinox to deny a few extra minions, helping what is this kind of XP deficit.
How happy do you think Equinox is to slide back over to a more melee aggressive role?
Absolutely ecstatic.
You know, if Sonya wasn't so strong, you know who that hero would be, right?
The guy moving over onto it?
No. For Equinox.
Oh, Kerrigan. Yeah, just bust out the Kerrigan. Yeah, look for that reset.
Sonya's way too strong, though, man.
Yeah, I mean, right now she provides essentially a safe version of Kerrigan, and a Kerrigan that can get a kill rather than rather than waiting on her cooldowns and having to get the one shot. She just does it pretty much every time Ancient Spears up, and in the downtime, a lot more threatening than that Kerrigan can be.
I was mimicking Kerrigan stabs over here.
Yeah, it was a rather interesting animation you had going on.
I don't know if I'd feel comfortable doing that anywhere else.
As he proceeds to do it again. Beautiful lurking arm there from Collusion. You know, we heard it in the interview, Casanova kind of giving respect over Collusion. I very much agree. He has been a support. Without a doubt, I think the most successful transition to support out of anybody. Hold up there. Dragon Arrow silencing is, oh man, just no moment at all to even pop Wrath unless it's hit before that Dragon's Arrow. Clean play here from Team Freedom. Find themselves another pick. You know, maybe return the favor of that stolen Shaman Camp, but they're going to get a bit more out of it than we saw out of No Tomorrow.
Collusion's been a highlight reel. There's been several posts made about him, and justifiably so. The guy is turned into an absolute beast in that support role. Now, again, after the Western Clash, I think we're going to see more and more Stukov. K1 Pro played a lot of Stukov in the earlier part, but it was few and far between. I think he's definitely risen in popularity. And somewhere in Europe, Shad's sitting at home with his feet up and his hands behind his head, being like, yeah, that's me.
Yeah, that's, remember when I brought that single-handedly to an entire meta and almost won an international championship with it? Because I do. Not a big deal.
Yeah, just chilling. No big deal.
13 talent here is nowhere to be found for either team. Team Freedom half a level out. Something that No Tomorrow, if they're going to take the skirmish, if they don't get a skeletal defender advantage, it's very much going to be on them to try and force the fight. Honestly, they're so far behind on the timing on all this, it's likely that they might have to force the fight anyways. Before that 13's here, Team Freedom goes in, 2-man jet propulsion, just testing the waters. Equinox going to force out the bunker. Jin, getting the damage there onto Yoda. They find themselves the Greyman, and that is the first to drop. Bunker entrance, nice lurking arm from Collusion, but it might be too little too late. Is Nasmus so very low. No sanctification available. The Twilight Dream silences him. Will he get it off? Not even going to try. 3-4-0. No Tomorrow just dominates that fight.
Big time plays there. And Dredd, you and I, we were studying all this. We're talking about supports yesterday. And I said, Tomster, man. Tomster has one of the highest participation rates of supports, but we'll take another look at this real quick. You can see Nasmus took a lot of damage, got the bunker out, but it was all about Shrite making the play to start things off, and then the wall, the zoning wall there, just keeping everybody locked out.
Yeah, and I want to highlight that kill started with a, brilliant initiation by No Tomorrow. That's not one of those cases where you look at Yoda and you go, why is your positioning out that far? But more so, I want to highlight the fact that this is exactly what we were asking. The Greymane versus the Hanzo Stukov was the Tassadar, or something that can be less vulnerable to these initiations that No Tomorrow's composition is great at. It is amazing at just all-inning and one-shotting a single target. It's brought to light there where the Greymane is vulnerable enough to go down. Will it continue to be so? Because Sanctification, I'll say it once, I'll say it again. Tyraels in North America, we're getting to the holy ground a little bit, not so much in this game, but more often than not. But our Sanctifications are very different than what we see out of the Eastern meta and the impact that they have. And that is, I feel like, going to force the the change in priority, at least maybe not so much with the Tyrael as much as I would some of the other heroes that kind of go with it, go against it.
We talk about sometimes the lack of macro play by some of these teams, but what No Tomorrow did is they let that Punisher go, then they stole the Shaman camp. It steals away an advantage from your opponent in the next phase, but what it also did was bought them a little bit more time, and you could actually see Equinox leading the charge on the minimap on Sonya, using that spear, getting that wall down in the middle lane, softening up that middle lane. They were not able to get the well, which I think would have kind of really punctuated that, but they did find a way to get that rotation, get the quick rotation, and take advantage of that Punisher they just obtained.
This rotation has been scouted by Freedom, thanks to a nice El Druin out there from Zugrug. Nobody's going to gain too much during this time frame. It seems like we're going to be waiting over the next Shrine phase. Normally, I would say this is where I expect Freedom's composition to become overly problematic, but to be honest with you, Jay, how the lack of Holy Ground makes it to where I personally don't feel like those territorial fights are something that they should depend on. If anything, I actually give No Tomorrow a huge advantage. Twilight Dream, you have Aegis, or not Aegis, excuse me, you have Warden's Cage to be able to lock everybody down on top of it. Cocoon, a new Barak easily can get impale targets. Sanctification is great at that, yes, but I just feel like there's more than enough on the side of No Tomorrow to not give concern.
Oh, there we go. There's the combo. The Warden's Cage is out. Collusion hops in the bunker, thwarts that, but he comes back out. He's going to go down. Twilight Dream hitting two members. Tomster, show him what you're working with, fella.
He's doing a great job there. Vault from Casanova. A smidge too early, but not really going to be something that costs him at this point in time. We got 25 seconds before the two members of Freedom spawn. How much will No Tomorrow claim for themselves? First victim going to be this middle fort. What is next? Is it keep front wall or bottom fort? Personally, I'd like to see bottom fort because the next shrine is being on bottom. That it's the safer play. Granted, the experience of the front wall and mid is an inevitable 16 immediately. Sonya going for that Shaman camp. You can tell there's a lot of focus around this next shrine phase here for No Tomorrow.
Shaman camp obviously will be something you should push with. Oftentimes it's about what you can get out of this, but if you're watching at home, this is something you see a lot of people. The timing of this is important. You can see how important it is that Jin is sitting in the bush. He's anchoring there, making sure they don't lose this. The key factor is to get this, wait for the timer, have that push while you're on the objective. If the objective stalls out, they have to go defend against that top lane. It would take a keep. Very important timing-wise, recognized here. They still have not capped it. No Tomorrow, squatting on it, should be picked up momentarily.
And it's only going to be amplified by the fact that we're still a minute out from Team Freedom even having their Shaman camp to spawn. That is the traditional kind of response to it. That being said, it's about 45 seconds so the pressure is relevant for No Tomorrow and something they've got to be keeping their eyes on. I will say, though they did wait on the cap, I would argue they waited too long. Yeah. They could have prepped it a little bit earlier, and it might be that it doesn't gain the macro pressure they want within the time window that they need, because right now is when it needs to be applied, and they just finished the cap.
They started to rotate up there, but then they're like, look, we're going to be too far behind. Nasmus hitting the big stun there on the jet propulsion. Casanova looking for a play, looking to lock somebody, and Nasmus is going to be there. Bunkers drop down. Equinox and team on the front line, falling back, looking to regroup, try and find a way. 22 skeletal defenders in favor of Freedom. Can they secure it?
Casa throws out another shade. Jin goes in. Knockup is not going to be needed. Impale. Warden's Cage goes through. The pulse bomb drops, and there's the kill. Twilight Dream out from Tomster. And I mean, let's be real here, Jay. How these fights, they are not even close. Like, they're really not. Whenever the initiation happens, Sanctification,
Oh!
Yoda goes back in, go for the throw, finds himself one, but it's only going to be one. Nice ice block here from Malfurion. Thompson keeps himself alive a little bit longer. You know, I was talking about the Law and
Zagreb!
Order.
Are you kidding me?
He's got the Law and
Oh!
Order. The passive gets the kill. Oh my
Oh!
goodness, what just happened?
I very rarely do you see team fights like that. There is no world that you live in where you're thinking No Tomorrow comes in, smashes 2 members of Freedom, and then somehow loses all 5? Look at this. This is insane. Like, 2 members are dead on Freedom.
All right.
Yoda's like,
Where's
well,
it
I'm
go
dead.
wrong? First of all, they all in. Jay Shrite getting punished by Yoda. Great job there. Double go for the throw. The explosion there from the amount of damage we saw of Hanzo over the wall set this up. Then we see Law and Order gaining a lot of opportunities within this tight choke. The stacking there. I mean, it was just brilliantly done.
Extra range for Hanzo, no big deal. The Punisher picked up by Freedom in the end because all members of No Tomorrow are dead. This Punisher went all the way to the core. When we look back, if Freedom wins this game, that is one of the most insane comebacks in a team fight you will ever see.
It's been a long while since I've seen a 3 versus 5. The Sanctification gaining little to no value even after it gets dropped, after they lose 2 members, and me ever go like, yeah, you have the right to win this fight. Like, there's no, outside of a major misplay, and even then, I would argue some positional mistakes, you know, here and there, but nothing I'd go, that was the misplay, right? Like, on the side of No Tomorrow, that was just Team Freedom playing it clean.
Lutano is hiding back there on Hanzo.
I mean, that's
snapping those arrows out.
Maybe that's the answer, you know? The Gray Main is more of like a, well, if you focus the Gray Main, you get the all-in. It doesn't matter. As long as Lutano lives, the trade-off in resources is worth it. He can Hanzo out, get enough to turn things around. I mean, it was amazing what we saw at the end of that fight, but we also have to keep in mind with the first, let's say Tracer does not go in and die there. What is that fight? It's a 2-for-0 still. In every initiation No Tomorrow has started, they have ended in their favor within seconds. I mean, I'm not trying to be the Debbie Down here. I'm just trying to bring perspective that by no means is this still back to even. I look at this and go, No Tomorrow is still pretty far ahead unless this keep goes down with this 20 advantage. And, I mean, look at Freedom. They're not hustling. They're not waiting whatsoever. They are hustling right over to it. Seeing Sonya and Tracer on the map.
They can still drop Bunker down if needed. That's the main thing is Bunker, but you don't need Bunker. If you can hold on, shield everything, you have minions in a camp pushing in, free keep for Freedom.
Tracer's going to be pressuring, well, not so much. I was going to say mid-keep wall. I feel like that's one of those moments, maybe could have stuck around a little bit longer, but as long as they end up getting the 20, which Sonya will confidently be able to pick that up for herself after that top wave. Freedom backs out to their camp. Shaman camps have now been the focus. They won't be as important or as impactful, at least, you know, maybe not so much on the side of No Tomorrow. It will be still relevant for Team Freedom as they do end up still having that fort to kind of get rid of, but more importantly, that keep pressure on bottom. If you can split the pressure both mid and top over that mid shrine, it gets to kind of a lose-lose scenario real quick.
You know, I'm looking at Freedom's composition. They could go full Fnatic on here. If things get even relatively weird, you have Holy Ground, you have Bunker, you have Greymane. Like, you could just backdoor a core if this game prolongs way too much. So it's up to No Tomorrow to keep that bottom lane pushed out, to maintain vision as much as possible. But it's also on Freedom's side to kind of play around that vision. Keep No Tomorrow thinking without committing, without showing. Speaking of showing.
Early burrow charge there. You could tell Freedom had, you know, kind of spidey senses tingling through that area. Somebody maybe get caught out, but not going to be the case. Scouting arrow does reveal onto Equinox and friends, but only for a moment. The mid clear is going to be important when it comes to information available over the shrine. Jay Shrite and Casanova quick to clear that up. He eats a Hanzo arrow to the face, and man, that chunks. Thompson throws out the heal. Be able to restore the balance in a moment.
Equinox on point.
Jay Shrite is flanking through top. He's at least trying.
He's looking for it. Collusion and Yoda on the back side. He's come through the bush, top left. Looking for it now that Zagreb is anchoring.
He's losing the fight in the 4-man, though, and now he's on an island by himself. They're all split. Jay Shrite falling so low, but the recall puts him in a bad spot. He's going to be the first to drop here. No Tomorrow is down one. Nasmus looking for a burrow charge in, but unable to get that. Warden's Cage locks them down. Thompson falling low, but Sonya unable to keep herself alive, and Team Freedom just dominates that skirmish after they see one Jay Shrite out of position, and they just go, all right, that's it. We all in. Very well done from them.
But they anticipate. Zugrug is literally the protector of the realm in this sense, because he provides that sanctification. He's literally anchoring that entire time in a unusual anchor position too. That is an experienced player. Anybody else is probably hanging out near the front line showing themselves, but Zugrug holding out there. Look, I'm not saying that's how you should do it all the time, excuse me, but the fact that it worked out shows that he had definite thought in mind, and it worked out for him.
Yeah, it was very well done. I will say, I do believe I'd have to go back and watch like every ounce of the minimap there. I'm pretty confident he showed for a flicker towards the original transition towards top, which led to a ping. So they knew that he was looking for top pressure, right? And then after the first shrub transition, he was completely clear, still no scouting, but then you see everybody move up and get some threat, and without showing, because if you notice the bunker, or excuse me, the Blaze initiation was high enough up that it would have gotten the reveal off the top shrub. What I'm trying to say is, by that positioning of Blaze, it was 100%. There was only one choke that this Tracer's going through, and it is deep, boys. It is deep. And so that was a great job from, again, the anchoring of Zugrug, get that kind of punishment. That's one of those moments where you normally want to be like, okay, Jay Shrite, come on. But, like, I mean, he is the Tracer on an all-in composition. The last fight didn't go in their favor, or at least not as cleanly as he would have liked. So, you know, you can see the thought process very much being there. It's just, I mean, it's Team Freedom. You know, they sit as one of the most formidable teams in North America through the formation of HGC for a reason.
Tracer went get stuffed, which is normally that instant blow-up kill off of your pulse bomb. Did not go total recall, which is kind of sometimes the back and forth depending on composition and safety. Total recall, when you recall, you get all the health back that you took in that period of time. Get stuffed, not so much, because once you recalled, he was still sitting at about 5% health. Wasn't too hard to finish that off.
Well, in case, you know, maybe that description wasn't good enough for you guys at home, if you want to figure out what